Добрый день, коллеги.
Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm Lev Afanasev. I'm head of the Anti-Fraud Solution Group, and I would like to introduce my topic, which is related to the anti-fraud systems nowadays. And I'm quickly going to switch to my presentation. So this presentation is entitled Anti-Fraud Systems Nowadays and How to Find a Toothpick in a Haystack. And this is one of the first presentations in this session. Hopefully everyone is still full of life, and I would like to make the first slide which is going to be full of numbers and a bit of statistics. So please bear with me. So in the end of October, the Ministry of Interior here disclosed some statistics about the crimes which had been registered for 9 months in 2019, and electronic crimes, they had grown up by 5 times versus the last year. And I just compared the statistics of 2019 and 2018, and I found for the first 6 months, for the 9 months, and the growth was from 8 to 5 times. So basically, the number of the crimes, electronic crimes, cyber crimes registered by the Ministry of Interior here has been growing by 20 times from 2013 to 2020. Everything which is related to IT crimes and not necessarily electronic payments. It's a huge volume, I say, and obviously there is a subtlety here hiding somewhere. Because these numbers are the numbers that had actually reached the Ministry of Interior. And 10-15 years ago, there was no practice. It was not common practice to register such crimes, cyber crimes, as precisely as these days. But despite that, the numbers are striking. They have been growing tremendously by a number of times, not necessarily by 5 times or whatever, by a number of times. So how are we going to oppose these crimes, considering that they keep on rising? And I would like to split it into big milestones to make the analysis of all those fraudulent activities and show you the timeline. For example, if we were going to find a needle in a stack of hay, which was 15 years ago, all those fraudulent activities were quite primitive and linear. You would get some access to the means of payment, like your plastic card, somebody else's plastic card, and in one time, in one go, all of the money is stolen from the banking account, and there was no readiness for the analysis of such activities back in the day. A large number of such crimes had been left unpunished, and people got away with murder. And it was just like finding a steel needle in a huge stack of hay back in the day. But considering that previously we could use a magnet to find a steel needle in a stack of hay, it was very easy to pull out a steel needle from that stack of hay. We learned how to register and figure out such crimes, but the crooks, the criminals, did not sit still, did not stand still, and they turned that needle into a needle made of aluminum using the technology. I'm just comparing it using the analogy. So the criminals started splitting their crime into a few steps for them to be more difficult to detect. But still, the activities were just remaining in the same legal entities that they had attacked previously, and they would attack the legal entities and would transfer their money onto a plastic card belonging to a physical person. That was a crime algorithm. And the magnet usage for finding such an aluminum needle became obsolete. But there was a way of finding it. You could have put that stack of hay on fire, so the hay would burn, and you would still find the needle. But as far as the relevant threats are concerned, for example, those threats that are crucial these days, the situation remains even more complicated. All these criminals do not act in a linear fashion, and they do not necessarily need to have access to the plastic card. They do not necessarily need to have access to the legal entities' banking account. You can just convince the customer socially by using social engineering means, and the customer would agree to transfer some money from his banking account using his own device. And the criminals, the fraudsters, would normally just split this whole amount into chunks, and partially the funds would still remain on the victim's account. It has been defined that they would reset, as we would normally say here in Russia in 2020, they would reset the account, and it's not that easy to detect such crimes. And they would be going multi-channel. They would start having more ways of pulling out the customer's money from his banking account. So comparing it with a stack of hay, it's not a metal object there, but a toothpick made of wood, which looks very much like a needle. But it's not a steel needle or a metal needle for that matter. So normally the analysis for the non-typical activities of that payment does not work here. So the criminals would be just adapting to the normal payment behavior of the victim customer, and the normal algorithm is very difficult to come up with for the detection, and it's very difficult to figure it out. I would say that the situation gets even more aggravated as we get more and more services, more and more financial services entitled fintech services, and at the same time all these fintech services become available to the good citizens and crooks. For example, the bank wire payments by using only the phone number to make the bank transfer, it has become very popular, and also the cashing out services, different cashing out options by using the phone number. All these multiple services that would have been launched every once in a while were prepared. They would not just appear without any additional testing and preparation in terms of cybersecurity. Obviously, they had all been arranged and secured, and a lot of things in such activities had been thought of and created, like cybersecurity protection, before it would become available to the general public. Still, there are some cautions to consider before launching such services into the mass use. For instance, I would call the use of the previous experience when a new service is are quite sophisticated. They use new technologies, new options, and there is no real statistics in terms of the usage of this service. And people would consider information security remain the same. They are the same people as those that would be creating the protection for the older services, and they would rely upon their experience and make up these protection systems correspondingly. They would analyze the functions, they would analyze that in terms of the further usage options and considering protection for all that, but still more and more new abstracts do arise which would facilitate fraudulent activities. For example, if you take a look at my slide, you can see a very well-protected castle, which is a good fortification. But if we pilot a helicopter, a battle chopper, this castle would be rendered completely obsolete in terms of its protection. Even the powerful protection, which was good for the Middle Ages, would immediately become absolutely vulnerable if you attack it with a military chopper. The modern reality reveals that getting digital information about any person is easy. Getting your personal ID, getting your passport data, getting your name and surname, your permanent address, etc., etc. It's very easy by monitoring social media and analyzing contacts with other people. You can analyze where and in which banks the victim had become a customer. You can pull out passwords and passcodes for the banking cards, etc. There are multiple ways of obtaining this information, also acquiring it, and through fraudulent websites, and the entry fee is relatively low to get access. You would just make a mean average of that, and it would just cost you 1 ruble per customer. And to get a very detailed database with all of the names and all of the banking cards data is easy. You just pay a few dozens of thousands rubles, which is not a very big amount of money, and for that matter, and you would be getting a very representative information. Even if most of this information is going to be useless, still the entry fee level is pretty low. Apart from that, phishing has become very popular, and also the virus attacks have become omnipresent. You don't even need to complicate anything here. It's very easy. You just register a domain. In terms of phishing, I mean, you can compose your message in a literate way. You can steal such information from the original page, and your phishing page would be pulling out the customer's data for you. There are many ways these days for attacking. There are many ways of having more and more services for criminal use. And if we take a definition, say, an absolutely safe PC, which does not exist in reality, an absolutely safe PC is the one which is put in a metal safe and is not powered. That's the absolutely safe personal computer. And to make a comparison with a safe payment, it's the payment made of the cash banknotes directly from the mint just printed in person. The exchange of these banknotes is made in person. You sign a contract and you have witnesses on your side. So you can call the absolutely safe PC an absolutely useless PC. It's the same here. An absolutely safe payment also is considered an absolutely useless one. And in reality, this cannot happen. There are no such absolutely safe payments. So I would say that these days the services will be developing and moving forward, regardless of the risks existing, because the computer solutions keep on evolutionizing. New services do spring up, new opportunities reveal, weaknesses become more apparent, vulnerabilities appear. Of course, they are patched every once in a while and the service becomes temporarily safe, etc. And we just move on step by step, and this service functions comes into appropriate equilibrium of functionality and safety. If we take these animals, somebody had come up with this idea of attaching the duck's nose, and we would have to improvise with these solutions to make our duckbill solutions, like the duckbills we can see on this slide. There are many ways to encourage fraudulent activities, but we need to make sure that our duckbills do not become omnipresent and do not become pervasive. I would like to share some examples with you, the examples of our customers, like 3 steps to success, I would entitle them. First of all, you do not attempt to do everything in a perfect way, and you do not attempt to do everything right away. Everything is developing in a very rapid fashion. New services do spring up, new opportunities arise, and when we create some kind of an anti-fraud solution, the solution which detects anti-fraud activities, there are some legitimate ways of addressing that. And if you do it, and if you address it by 100%, that's not quite possible to do. And it would become a good rule. It would become a good rule of Pareto, 80-20 split. So that this is also a very important rule and is generating a good effect. If you cover 80% of cases of vulnerabilities, if you spend 20% of time on that, it would be a very appropriate solution. And you'll have to take a look at the remaining 20%, and by the launch of the existing 80%, you take a close look at the remaining 20%, and with a big chance of probability, these 20% may easily become obsolete. Just like those from those 20% existing, they can become absolutely useless with time. So these are the iterations that do occur every once in a while. And this is where you have to make small but firm steps forward to always remain on the edge. And the second step, when we build, when we reveal and identify the suspicious fraudulent activities, is to use the maximum amount of information from the available sources. So apart from the payments that are analyzed, you use some additional information about the customer, about the payment process. And additional parameters. This is where I would like to highlight the thing is just to use available and accessible sources. The words available and accessible are key here. And we could go back to that Pareto rule. Not all of the data, not all of the information can be considered useful. And it's very difficult sometimes to understand whether this information is useful or not. So you can spend quite a lot of time sometimes to acquire some additional information. But it may not give any significant effect in the long run. So if you really have this understanding, if you really have the understanding which data you really need, if you have the cases which do exist, then this data needs to be used and used more accurately. But for example, if we are talking about acquiring, there may be some information from the bank, say, that for some of the POS terminals, there may be a situation arising that such POS terminals would be having the recurring error, which applies only to a few models of POS terminals only. So the question is, which model of the POS terminal is vulnerable? This information is very important to know. This information is going to help you close the case and eliminate the problem. The model and the make of the POS terminal is not so important and does not radically affect the evaluation of this operation as being risky or not risky. So if this information about POS terminals is very easy to obtain, it would be expedient and appropriate to connect this information to the operation analyzed. If it becomes difficult to get such information, it doesn't make much sense to waste your time on getting this information. It may, of course, become useful in the long run, but if it does not become apparent in the first place, if it's very difficult to recover, it will not help us detect such fraudulent activities sufficiently well. The more difficult the situation to analyze, the more machine learning required. And that would be the step 3 in this pathway. And machine learning goes together with human activities. Machine algorithms can really operate with a huge amount of data, and they can detect and reveal the trends. They can make up some mathematical models which can detect and reveal fraudulent activities. But if something radically different arises, if there is a new level of abstraction comes up, machine learning may not react on time. It would be taking too long to react, and the human being may be reacting to that in a quicker way. So some manual input, some manual adjustments are necessary. If we go back to my castle example, if we take this mathematical model which builds and creates this castle, when the battle chopper arrives, it does not guarantee that this mathematical model of building the castle will adjust to that immediately. It will still continue building taller walls and thicker brick walls, and only after a while it will start putting the concrete dome over it to protect from the hits from the sky. Only when a human arrives on time can help us fix this vulnerability in a timely way. And I guess this is it in my presentation. Thank you very much for joining me here in this session. And in my final slide here, I would like to briefly mention the main statements here. And I would like to wish you all well. And I hope that this evolution of your IT systems
приводило к правильным результатам, эффективным в виде эволюционного процесса, постоянно развивающегося и совершенствующегося. Спасибо. Если какие-то вопросы есть, то
have some questions to me,
можете задавать в
then
чате.
You can write them in the
chat,
and I hope I'll take some of them. Thank you.